few series. One of them is the Eurydice series that Judith Butler is referring to. It's slightly shocking to see them so big because these are small paintings, and for the scale of them you will see in a moment. I think myself in the studio in one of the images, so that you would be able to. This is my studio in Tel Aviv. This is in a museum in France. It's called L'Abattoir. The works are from about 15 years, since 92 until today. And these are mixed technique, all with oil paint as well. Some of them are strictly oil painting, though they don't look too much as oil paintings. As it goes along, I can tell you, maybe this will comfort you, that in the years that I was working as a psychologist, I didn't want anybody to know that I'm also painting. And when I came to France and decided to paint, this is my studio in Paris, then I didn't want anybody to know that I'm also a psychoanalyst, because this was very bad for one's reputation, to be both artist and somebody who's thinking. I hope it changed during the years, but when I started to work in Paris, it was the time of the figuration libre, and you had to be a wild, non-thinking artist. So I managed to separate the two practices for quite a long time, until at a certain moment I started to get the courage to mix them up, because all my theoretical writing stem from my practice as artist and as psychoanalyst. So at a certain moment it was important to put these together and reveal the source where the theoretical articulations starts from, which is for me always the artistic practice and the analytical practice. So these are all kind of Eurydice paintings, Eurydice 23. I will not enter into any explanation of my works, not tonight in any case, or a description of the work. What I will enter into is what I made out of it in terms of thinking, of thoughts. So now let's try to stop that. And I want to show you just very quickly the beginning, and then we stop that as well. My notebooks and the size of the notebooks. First of all my theoretical elaboration appeared in the notes that I take while I paint or while I listen to patients or other people. So these notebooks are, in a sense, the biography or autobiography of everybody, all those that I encounter. And it is through looking again and again and reading the notebooks that I could elaborate slowly the theoretical frame. Now let's see if I know how to make this one work. And we'll look at 1 or 2 minutes of that. This just to show you again the size, the quantity, and how they look. For many years, I showed them only on about 3 museum exhibitions during my whole career. Once in '93, then in 2000, but very recently, these notebooks became source of a lot of interest and research in the art world. So I'm thinking of ways to show them a bit more. There's a lot of thinking involved about how to show them, because, as I said, these are my words and words of other people. It's all mixed. And okay. We can put some light and move to theory, if you don't mind. Oops. I would like to present you with some to give you some description of what I have named the matrixial space, the matrixial border space, the matrixial subjectivity, which is subjectivity as an encounter or trans-subjectivity. Give you some of the coordination of how to enter that mental or psychic field, some idea of what it might turn to, or how it can work in the aesthetic field and in the ethical field. And I will also give you some ideas of what I'm working on recently, starting from this description. I need to know how much time I have. Wolfgang?
Maximal 60 minutes.
60? Including the discussion? Okay, so this is generous, and we can go. So what I've named the matrixial border space is a mental or psychic sphere which is both trans-subjective and subsubjective. A dimension of subjectivity that does not enter the most descriptions of psychoanalytical thinking, maybe also philosophical thinking, where the thinking about the subject begins within the limits of the individuality and subject being joined somehow together, so that we describe in psychoanalysis the development of the subject within, we might say, a person, in a sense. And then we have the question of how one subject meets another subject, and we have intersubjectivity, relationality, and all kind of connections. In the matrixial sphere, which is another dimension in subjectivity, from the beginning, we are talking about the trans-subjective transmission. So that subjectivity from the beginning is not a notion that is limited to the boundaries of the body, of the individual body. And this is not to deny the individual body or the boundaries of the subject. This is simply another perspective and another dimension. I explained in the class today what would be a subsubjective, the domain of the partial subjects, for those who are familiar with Deleuze and Guattari's writing, the domain of part subjects. So this is the partial subsubjective level and transsubjective level working together. A mental matrixial event is always an encounter event. Traces of the event, psychic traces of the event, are always traces of encounter event. And therefore, each psychic trace in the matrixial space transgresses the individual psychic boundaries, even if and when its awareness arises in the field of a separate individual subject.